My name is Hien, and I am a singer, producer, sound designer based in Brooklyn, New York, originally from Hungary.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over. Thank you for coming on the show today. So how did your family get to Hungary from Vietnam?
Yes, a lot of people ask me this question because they're like, wow, I haven't met a Vietnamese-Hungarian in my life, here in the US especially. So my parents moved to Hungary from Vietnam in the 80s. And that was after the Soviet Union collapsed. And basically, that was the end of socialism in Hungary, and there was a lack of labor force. So Vietnamese immigrants had some opportunities to work there and later on stay there. And my mother went there as a factory worker, and my dad went there as a scholar.
And did they meet in Hungary?
Yes, they met in Hungary.
And what did they end up doing for, all the times that you were growing up?
Yeah, so most of the Vietnamese in Hungary at that time, they started as like factory workers or like they studied in a college, and then most of them ended up working at this big Asian market where there were a lot of like Chinese, Vietnamese, and Arabic people.
And so you've been in Brooklyn for how long now?
I've been here since 2019, so I guess almost 4 years.
Now, what is the difference between Hungarians and people in America?
You mean specifically like Vietnamese communities?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love meeting Vietnamese communities like everywhere because I love how we are so similar and so different at the same time. And I have different Vietnamese group. Okay, let me just start again. So I have different Vietnamese friend groups that I hang in New York, and some of them are from Vietnam, like they were born in Vietnam. Some of there are Viet Americans, and some of there are Viet Europeans. And what is it? Like that's a really good question. What's the difference? Um,
Like if you could think about the difference between Vietnamese Americans and Vietnamese Hungarians, is there a big difference or are they all basically the
I think
same?
there's definitely a difference because just as like a difference between American and a European person, so there's that. I think that okay, so the first thing that I noticed, it's like a little thing, is that I think that my parents' generation in Hungary, like they dress a little bit more like reserved, and they are like with their like mannerisms and behavior, they're a little bit more like like
Conservative?
yeah, keep it for themselves. And when I hanged out with this really fun Vietnamese group in New York, where there were all the generations as well, and we drank together, we like basically partied together, and I don't know, like how uh like often that happens, but that was something that I noticed, like wow, when I go to these Vietnamese events in Hungary, like I never see our parents like this
Open.
like loose and open, and that was really cool to see.
But I wonder how that sort of plays out in the way you were raised and growing up because conservative, does that mean that the way that you view the world is a lot more conservative because of your Hungarian roots versus
I
being in America
don't
now?
know. I don't think, I mean, me definitely not, because I'm an artist. I live in Bushwick, so I'm pretty like open-minded. But I think this is so difficult because like I feel like that is a similarity between the Viet Hungarians and Viet American parents, that they want the children to be like, doctors and lawyers, and like college degree is very important. Like I think that's something similar. Um, but with the parents, you know, that's something that I'm thinking a lot, that I would love to see Viet American and Viet Hungarian parents to just like have a conversation, because
Hmm.
like we like the children, the next generation, we are like hanging with each other. We love to talk about everything, including our background and our upbringing. But our parents, I guess, like it's less likely to be in the same space,
Yeah,
because
I agree.
yeah. So I would love to hear, a conversation between them.
Yeah. Now, what does it mean to be Vietnamese to you?
Mm, it definitely changes over time, because when I was a teenager, I I think I wasn't that proud to be a Vietnamese. I tried to like assimilate more with Hungarians, and I refused to. There were years when I refused to speak Vietnamese to my
Yeah.
parents. Now looking back, like I wish I didn't do that, because I would speak Vietnamese better today. Um, but yeah, at that time, I think that definitely I went through like some sort of identity crisis that all of us versus Vietnamese go through. Like, okay, so what am I? But I'm really thankful that I had the Vietnamese community, which is like much smaller in Hungary than in the US, but they are very like close. And I'm really grateful that I had them, and my best friends, my childhood best friends, are from that community as well. And later on, especially when I moved to the US and I was exposed to so many more cultures, and I went to Berkeley, the music school, where there was people from so many countries, and they played their own like music, and I had a culture shock. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, Hungary is a much more like homogene society. And after that, I think I started to embrace my Vietnamese side more, and still not forgetting my Hungarian side, because I still consider myself just as Hungarian as Vietnamese. And and after spending some years in the US, being far from my family, having like homesick and feeling homesick, I started to yearn for more Vietnamese stuff. I started at like simple things like food, like I just missed my mom's food. I missed my family and the big dinners we have. And then I think that came out in my artistry as well, because I started to learn more about Vietnamese music and just Vietnamese history and culture. Also, my grandparents used to be, when they were alive, they used to be cải lương
Oh,
musicians.
wow.
So my yeah, so my maternal grandparents, they actually met in a Kailang theater. My grandfather used to play the guitar and like some traditional instruments like danyi, and violin. And my grandmother used to be a singer and actress in the Kailang theater, and that's how they met. So I every time I go to Vietnam, I try to visit Kailang theaters, the theaters where my grandparents used to work at, and learn about the music, because I find it very beautiful.
Yeah. It's sad that that form of artistry is dying in Vietnam.
Definitely. I was so sad because there was this there was this folk theater that I used to go with my father, and I tried to visit last time when I was in Vietnam, which was last December, and they said that they changed it into like a parking lot, like a park, like a yeah. So I was like, whoa, in just 2 years like that happened. So yeah, definitely the genre is becoming more and more forgotten and not like popular, and only like because my mother's side of the family, there are still people, my cousins, uncles who work in the Kai Luang world, and they tell me that when they do tours or like concerts, it's usually like the countryside more than in the big cities, which is sad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get into that type of music because I think when we connect emotionally with music or literature, it has to be sort of relevant to our feelings and the way we look at the world. And when you don't really understand Kai Lung, I can imagine even the young people in Vietnam not understanding what is really going on in the lyrics and the words that's spoken, you know? It's kind of like opera too, right? It's the same when you don't really kind of connect with these ideas of like so far ago, and it's just difficult to really make it popular again.
Yeah, 100%. I still have some hope that Kai Luang and traditional music will have, their comeback, even maybe in Vietnamese pop culture at some point. Like I think that's already happening, especially in the West, that traditional motifs and sounds and aesthetics are coming back in the world of arts. And I think that it's just a matter of time. That's what I hope
Yeah.
for.
Well, I mean, like if even you think about like an American landscape, you know, in the cities like New York, LA, it's, I mean, there are people who listen to country music in New York and LA, I'm sure. I have family who listen to country and they live in LA. But at the same time, the topics are very different. The feelings are different. The things that you get from, you know, country music, American country music is very different from what somebody in the farms in the Midwest would be feeling. So the connection's a little bit difficult, and especially the language that's used in Kailung is sometimes so far removed from everyday language that it's what are you going to connect with, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, like what Kailung means to me is more about the memory of my grandparents and the times when I was little and just listening to my grandfather playing his instruments at home. Like that's the memory I associate it with. Um, but luckily, I found my grandfather's old cassette tapes, and yeah, we found like around 19 cassette tapes,
Wow.
which he used to record his favorite Kailung music on the radio, and also he improvised and he just recorded himself for hours. And some of these cassettes, because they're too old, unfortunately, we could not like recover them. But some of them, I was able to digitalize them. So I have all this material on my computer, and I can't wait to dig into it and try to sample it. Obviously, I will never make I will never make Kai Leung music. I have my own like music and sound, but I would love to sample his recordings and try to incorporate it in my own music.
Yeah. Can you imagine how cool that would be? Like the way Kanye did, you know, the old Motown in the early days. He took samples from, you know, Motown and old soul and he put it into his music and sampled it and made it modern.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm really looking forward to experiment with it because it would somehow be like a collaboration with my grandfather, like
Yeah,
it's
that would be amazing. And I don't think it's been done quite popularized yet.
yeah, yeah, I follow some Vietnamese artists who also like to use some like traditional motifs, and they like to sample from like old ancient music. But yeah, it's definitely not like that many people doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go back to Hungary real quick. What what does it mean to be Hungarian? Because you said that, you know, you have Hungarian roots, obviously, and what does that mean? How can you describe being Hungarian? And because, you know, when I think about being an American, I can kind of explain what that means for me and really really elaborate. But how can I want to hear what a Hungarian person, how do you describe that experience?
Okay. This is a difficult question. It's so complex because this is like my everyday my everyday question to myself as well. Like, there are situations, there are periods of life when I feel more connected to my Vietnamese side and sometimes to my European or Hungarian side. Um, but what does it mean being Hungarian? Wow. Ah, like I I always have to tie it back to my family's history, to my parents, because um obviously being Vietnamese, I feel like for a lot of us, it means to be resilient. It means to be like we associate it to our parents' success story, that they survive and they made a better life for us after the war. And the Hungarian side of me also somehow like ties to that, because I think that my parents deciding to come to Hungary, that was a sort of like sacrification for us, like the children. So
So when you think about Hungarian roots, you think it's tied to your parents' journey, right? Uh,
yes,
Were
yes, no,
you born in
I
Hungary?
think, sorry.
Were you born in Hungary?
Yes, yes, I was
Yeah.
born in Budapest, in Hungary.
So I think like if I could give an example, when somebody asks me, what does it mean to be American, right? Like for me, I think of extreme individualism, right? I think
Mm.
American identity for me personally is the red, white, and blue flag. I think about I think about war that America goes and puts on other countries in a dominant way. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying this is the American identity when I think of independence and fighting for freedom and all of the things that we stand for: creativity, self-expression, all of these things. And bucking the trends for doing things the normal way. We want to do things in a way that's new and always fresh. And so like that's how I dig into my American identity: individualism, self-expression. So when you think about Hungarian identity, what is it about the Hungarian identity? And I was raised for about a few years. I went to a boarding school with Hungarian priests, Hungarian Catholic priests. So that's why I want to
Mhm.
like explore this idea of what does your Hungarian roots have to do with who you are as a human being.
Yes, it definitely does. Like, so when you said like the American identity is all about like individualism, right? So I think that definitely in Hungary, that's a much like less and softer
Mm.
of that. Um, because Hungary is not Western Europe. It's like Central Europe, Eastern Europe region more, that they had to go through socialism quite recently, and Hungarians, like if we think about, like, let's say World War I and World War II, um they were always on the wrong side, and they had to go through a lot as well. So it's I think it's a nation and society that deeply still like are healing from these periods. So I think that And obviously, I'm not saying there was no racism in Hungary, because it's again a homogeneous society, which usually comes with that.
Yeah.
But the people who at that time could empathize with my family story and the story of Vietnamese and refugees, immigrants, I think that because they also had to go through a lot, they could relate to that.
Now, when did the music begin for you?
The music began for me, I think that honestly, when I started to speak, like I grew up around a lot of music, both in Hungary and the times we visited in Vietnam. So my parents, always every day listen to Tuinga Pari every day. and and then when we went to Vietnam, my grandparents listened to Cải Lương and played Cải Lương music. So honestly, the moment I started to speak, that's what my mom tells me. I started to sing and try to mimic whatever I heard from the TV and the radios.
And this decision to do it professionally, they were okay with it from day one? Or was
No,
it?
definitely we had some conversations. So as a career, it started for me when I was 14. I was in this talent show in Hungary. It's like basically the Hungarian Idol kind of game show. And I participated in that when I was 14. My friends kind of encouraged me to just like apply and see what happens. Like we didn't really expect anything out of it. But then I was there in the like last rounds of the competition. And after that, I got offered a record deal. And that's when we really had to have some serious conversations. Like obviously they didn't want me to like stop going to school or like have problems catching up there. So I think that I was lucky because they were pretty supportive with me compared to what I have been seeing in my environment in our community when it comes to children wanting to do something like in the
Yeah,
creatives.
I can't
Huh?
imagine at 14 you were fully by yourself getting into a competition. They had to have some, your mom and dad had to have some sort of help. You know, you probably had to have some sort of help with getting vocal skills up to that point to even get to a point where you're good enough to do this contest, right? They had to support it. They had to, I don't know, pay for lessons. I mean, how did that support come in from your mom and dad?
Yeah, so the support that they gave me was like their trust, I I did like well in school, so I that's why I think it was a little easier for me to like I promised them that I would, keep doing well in school. And yeah, like and that really like happened. Like I missed a lot of classes and a lot of exams, but I was able to catch up. So that was like the first priority for them, that my education will not get affected
Yeah.
badly because of this competition. And then after that, they thought that okay, the competition ends, and then we're gonna go back to normal life. I'm gonna go back to school and kind of like keep singing as a hobby.
Yeah.
And then we got the record deal. I was touring a lot, performing a lot, and they really saw that this is something I love to do. So I think that the deal we made between each other was that as long as school will not be affected by this, I can just keep doing it. And I think that that's how I was able to pull that off. And
But
then after that,
another
yeah.
aspect of that, though, too, might be, did the money come in while you were going to school? Is that kind of another thing that they saw?
So I was starting to make my own money, yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
probably that helped that helped too.
it's Vietnamese parents, right? You can't be touring and not making money, or they can't be putting in money while you're touring, right? So that probably made it a lot easier to go, okay, if you want to take this path in music, we could see it because the money comes in, and you can
Yeah.
balance school and money together and perform and do what you love. So why not, right?
Yeah, they luckily they didn't have to put in money because like I had a record deal, and when we like produce music videos or like all those costs were covered by them. So yeah, that was I guess like easier in that way. And then we had to have another serious conversation when I finished high school, because originally the plan was I'm gonna apply to this like engineer technology, like college. And obviously I did not. I don't even know how I like now. If I have to imagine myself being like a chemical engineer or something, it's just like it's kind of funny. But yeah, at that time I was like, yeah, sure, like why not? I was good in math and science, and so I guess that's my path. So I brought up this idea of me going to a music school, and then they got like a little worried, like, oh wait, so you're not trying to like have like a real job or like a real thing. And so I applied to a bunch of US based and UK based music schools, and I still applied to the Hungarian one as the chemical engineer major. But I applied to the music school, so I got the results back kind of at the same time. And then I got accepted to Berklee College of Music. And first I received like a half tuition scholarship. But like obviously it was like a big news, like we were so happy that I got accepted. Like Berklee was always like a dream school of me. I heard about it from the movies.
Yeah.
And when I got accepted and I got like a scholarship, obviously it was a big thing even for my parents. But then the problem was that the half tuition scholarship was still not enough for me to start my studies there. Like my parents could not support the rest. So that was like that was like a little bit like difficult time for me, because I'm like, oh my god, this is like the school of my dreams, and I can't even like go there. Even they gave me a scholarship, but I can't start my studies. So what to do? And then so I could not go. I could not move to the US. And then the next year I re-auditioned, because Berklee at that time, and I don't know if they still have that, they had this like re-audition policy where you could like you already like got accepted, but you can do another audition to be considered for a bigger scholarship.
Mm.
And so the next year I flew out to it was in London, I think. That's where they had the auditions. And after that I got the full scholarship, the full tuition scholarship. And that was like that was crazy. I could not believe
Wow.
that to happen. So I told my parents, like, look, I got the full scholarship. I know you're a little bit against this, but it's the full scholarship. You don't have to pay. Like it's covered. Can I go? And they were like, yeah. I mean, that's when they realized that this is something really serious for me, and this is what I actually want to do. So they let me go. And that's when I started my whole US journey.
So what did you do differently at the second audition that got you a full scholarship? Did you practice more? What happened? How did you know that the second audition could provide you with a full scholarship?
You know what is crazy? Because after the second audition, I remember me going home like crying, because I had like swollen tonsils. And I was like, no way I'm gonna get like a scholarship after this. Like, this is all over. I'm not gonna go to the US. But somehow I did. And I think that what helped me is my song choice. So the first audition, I was singing uh like an old soul song by Jennifer Holiday. I tried to pick something that could showcase that I understand the American music, or like I listened to that. And the second time I auditioned, I brought in a Hungarian folk inspired composition that I made. So it was like a Hungarian folk song cover, but kind of in my own way. And I think they like that. I think that definitely added to the success, because maybe they, beyond my technical skills, I believe that they saw that I have a maybe a unique story to share. And yeah, I mean, I'm just guessing. Obviously, I don't know what went through there, or I don't know if I actually sounded better. But as I remember, I did not sound better.
But that wasn't a strategy, right? Like you didn't think that that was a strategy that you could do that would change their mind. It was just like, okay, I did the American thing. Now I'm just going to switch over to Hungarian.
Yeah, no, honestly, it was not a strategy. It was because I had the swollen tonsils. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do a song that I'm like so much more like comfortable with. And maybe that's why I
Yeah.
sounded better, honestly. But that was something that like resonated with me more. I mean, I loved American music too, and that was something that I always aspired to like be able to sing. But that Hungarian folk song was something, I mean, that like remake was something that was really like close to me. So when I got sick, and I felt that something was not right here, I'm like, okay, I gotta go with something that like is like easier for me.
Yeah, and for all the people that are listening, Berkeley is not an easy school to get into, and definitely not an easy school to get a full scholarship for.
Yeah, it's one of the best time of my life, like studying at Berkeley. And honestly, like that changed my whole life, because that's why I'm still here in New York today, in the US, like pursuing my dreams and doing music because of Berkeley.
So tell me a little bit about how your sound developed after Berkeley or during Berkeley. I mean, how did you stumble upon what you sound like today?
I think during the years at Berkeley, that was just like discovery mode for me. I was just like in culture shock. I got to try so many kinds of music. Like I was in a Balkan choir, I was in a Middle Eastern fusion ensemble. I learned Motown, musical theater, like everything you can imagine, in that 4 years. And I started to be interested in like producing my own music, because that time I wrote songs, I sang, but like I didn't produce. And the same time when I started to be interested in electronic music, I also, saw like really young producers and beat makers around me who has been producing beats since they are 18. And I'm like, what? Like you are producing beats at the age of 18? Like that's something? Like, wow, that's possible. So then I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I want to produce my own music too, because every time I work with producers, like I could not really like articulate my ideas that I had in
Yeah.
my head, like that sound that I imagined. So I was really frustrated. And obviously, as a young teenager girl in the music industry in Hungary, like it was difficult to navigate through, a space, a creative space where it was all older and mostly, male producers. So I was a lot of time like intimidated to articulate my ideas. And at Berkeley, I definitely got that confidence, because I learned music theory, I learned how to produce, I learned all this technical stuff. Uh, that after that, I was really comfortable talking about music and talking about the sound that I want. But then, later I started to produce my own music, and I was like, okay, this is much like easier. This is like a shortcut. Like I can just like actually create what's in my mind. And then I dig deeper in electronic music. I explored like the rave scene and the electronic music scene in Boston and in, you know, Budapest and everywhere where I went. So that was a confirmation for me that, okay, like I'm not a singer only, like I'm a producer and a sound designer now as well. Like it's just as part of my artistic identity as being a singer.
You know, as I hear you talking about the vocal training and then, you know, producing, and I think about like somebody like Lady Gaga or Adele, their music is quite simple. Their stuff is actually pretty simple to produce if you think about it, right? It's clean, it's piano, vocals, a few things that they add in to make the sounds rich. I'm sure you could easily do stuff like that, right? I mean, that's just my gut thought, right? Because I'm going somewhere with this, right? Technically, you could do it yourself. You could, you know, have a piano person, you can write songs, you could sing it. It could be done. Now, dance or electronic dance music is a little bit different, a little bit more complicated. But when you listen to like a record by Adele or Lady Gaga that's sort of like in the realm of like a little bit more simple, can you in your mind say, "Oh, I could do that easily in my sleep," or is it, or am I way off about that opinion?
I don't think that way about those records when I listen to them. Like when I listen to music, I don't really analyze how it was made. Unless it's something that I try to like, you know, get inspiration from and do something similar in my music. But usually when I listen to music, I just enjoy it. And for me, whether that track was made in 8 hours or 3 months, like that doesn't take or give the value, you know, to it. So even though I went to Berkeley and I know the association with Berkeley kids is like, oh, like they are very like music nerds and very like technical. And honestly, like I kind of like wanted to escape from that mindset at Berkeley. Like in when I moved to New York, I wanted to unlearn a lot of things, you know, like obviously keep a lot of tools that can help me, but I wanted to unlearn a lot of things that was considered like advanced or like better, you know.
Like
He
what?
there like everybody's making like crazy like I don't know jazz fusion music that is, I think that the audience for that a lot of times is like musicians only, like you know there are certain, like there are those type of music. But when I listen to like pop songs like, you know, from Adele and Lady Gaga, I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful song. And I think that when you make a very like magical song, it's almost like that moment and that creativity is given to you. It's like a gift, and it's not necessarily about like how technical
Yeah, that,
you
and
can
so
get.
that's what I'm getting at. When I listen to those records like a Lady Gaga or Adele, they're very simple, but that's exactly what I was going to say is that they're capturing something and they're bottling something that's very magical in time. And it's almost like when I listen to it, I go, what is it about those artists at that level that has that magic, you know, because you're right. It could take you 8 hours or 3 months, but there's something about the magic of those tracks that they produce that, you know, I think there's a lot of technical people out in the world that could produce stuff like that. But what makes this to me like audio gold for when I listen to those artists? I mean, because I'm big fans of Adele and Lady Gaga. And so when I listen to it, you know, a lot of the stuff is very basic. But, you know, I understand basic, but there's also a sort of magic to what is happening in the studio. Can you explain what that is as a person who's not in, I'm not in music. So but I know what I'm hearing is it's something that's very magical.
Yeah, it is magic. Like those moments when you make something and you hear that it's just different from the
Yeah.
rest of your catalog. It's really magic. It feels like for me, it's not even like it's out of my control
Right.
sometimes. Like you know, I will write music and produce music like pretty often, But when something like hits and it's like, this is it, and I need to like listen to it all day, it's, I think it's really something that it's given. And obviously, like, I believe that artists have to actually like live life and have like experience that they draw inspiration from. Like, you know, some producers say like, oh, you should produce music every day because it's a muscle thing, muscle memory. And maybe for some people that works, not for me. Like, I cannot just force myself to produce every day and like get like, you know, 5 tracks out like, you know, every week, because if I don't go out in life and I don't get like inspired, I don't interact with people, with nature, I cannot write about anything.
Yeah. And same goes with emotional sort of connecting and being in love and being out of love and being hurt and being damaged. And all of those things play into what makes magic. I mean, yeah, if you listen to Adele's stuff, it's all, and Taylor Swift, you know, those are lyrics that are powerful because these artists lived such strong extremes of love.
Yes, it's almost like sad, but like those artists who like really like went through things and they have like the story to tell, like I feel like those music are more like relevant. So I guess, like I said, it's kind of sad in a way that like we have to go through things to like to create like great work. I think in a lot of cases and a lot of times. But I think, you know, a lot of us become artists and choose this path because we just felt we are, I don't know, not understood, or like kind of like felt not fit in our like environment or groups, and we just we were looking for another outlet to feel safe and comfortable.
Yeah. Now, what is your trajectory in your mind on where you want to go and become as an artist? Like, how do you want to be seen, or what kind of legacy do you want to leave? And I mean that in any facet, which is financially, number of downloads. Like, what is it that you go for? What is your sort of like the expression at the end of the day?
Hmm. I think I want to create freely. Like that's my first and foremost, that like I want to have creative freedom. And I had times when I didn't have creative freedom. So that's why
Mm.
I I would not want to do that anymore. Um and look, like I think that when I was younger, there were times when I thought that, you know, bigger numbers,
Yeah.
bigger reach, or money is the indicator of being a successful artist or successful person.
Hmm.
And as I become older, I think that the definition of success for me definitely changes. And I consider myself successful when I can create freely, when I can have healthy relationships with my family and with my loved ones. I have enough to, I don't know, to eat and spend on uh things that make me happy. And if the outcome of my career and success will be, I don't know, bigger, smaller in numbers, that's, you know, great, but I don't want to focus on that. Obviously, if my music will be loved by more people and I can travel more to play shows and connect with different communities, that's beautiful. And I hope I will be lucky enough to have that. But that's not my like main motivation to have more and like, you know, bigger exposure.
But separating that desire is very difficult, isn't it? Or not for you?
It is difficult at times, especially, you know, when we are not in a good
Yeah.
place with ourselves and we start to compare um ourselves with others. Like I think it's a struggle that we all have to go through. And yeah, like, you know, I have periods in my life when I feel really like insecure and I don't like the way I sound. I hate everything I do. Like, I hate the way I perform, the way I sing. Like, I have those times as well. And I try to overcome that with spending more time with my loved ones and taking, you know, necessary breaks from music if that helps. I talk actually a lot about that with my therapist, that I don't want to be the artist here 24/7. Like, you know, I want to be a girl who likes to cook at home and have friends over and not having to be that artist self of you like 24/7. And that's difficult because we care about our art. We just want to spend, you know, every time to make it better, to execute cool creative ideas, and to, I don't know, grow in our career path, especially in the whole like grinding, like hustle culture, you know. But yeah, I think and in New York especially, you know, that's very difficult. It's a really fast-paced city, so I really need to create that bubble, that safe space at our home where I can kind of like disconnect from that noise and society's like pace when I need to.
Now, you just came back from South by Southwest. How did you get into South by Southwest? What was the experience like, and what is it going to do for the future of your music?
So South by was so much fun, and it was one of the best weeks, literally like one of the best weeks of my life. I did not expect it to be this fun. So it was my first time playing at the US festival, and also my first time visiting Texas. Like, I only been to the East Coast and the West Coast, but I haven't really traveled in the US, which I will love to do at some point. And I was just like exposed to so many good art and artists that I discovered like from all over the world. And I performed 3 shows, and I met a lot of cool people and made some new friends. So I just had a lot of fun because obviously, like, I love to perform, I love to be around music, but to be exposed to so many like other, especially like independent artists who chose a similar path like me, and they are at the similar stage of their career and life, but from another country, it was very inspiring.
How did you get invited to play at South by?
So you can actually apply to play at South by every year, and then South by will choose a number of artists, and then they let you know a few months before that you are chosen and whether you want to play or not.
So it's just a matter of applying, and then you get selected. And do they pay for you to come out, and do they put you up in hotels and all of that, travel expenses? How does it work?
Yeah, unfortunately, they do not pay. Um, which, you know, there have been a lot of conversations about that in the artist community. Um, and that's why my first like feeling with South by was that obviously this is a great opportunity. It's such a major festival and great networking opportunity, great, like, you know, music, all that. But I was like, like, will it be worth it, you
Yeah.
know? But it was absolutely worth it. We made some really like nice connections, and I had so much fun on the stages. So I've been taking a little break from performing. You know, obviously COVID was one reason, but then after that I kind of like built a new live set with my new materials. So there was like 2 years when I didn't perform, and I definitely had to like get back in shape. So I played like 2-3 shows prior to South by, in New York, and I felt that I wasn't like confident fully to be on stage, and I was a little worried. But then I don't know what, like probably I rehearsed enough, I was prepared, but also maybe the stars were like aligning up there, I don't know, but like I had so much fun on the stages of South by, and I felt really like confident, and I felt good about the performances, and that's what I'm really happy about, because the few shows I did before, like I wasn't really happy about my performance. I was like, oh my God, maybe I should. And those are the moments when I'm like, oh my God, maybe I should just give up. Maybe I should stop the whole thing, like, you know. But then after South by, I feel much more motivated to keep going on, to make new music, and to play more shows.
Yeah, so what about the business side of the music? I was trying to get into that earlier with the South by question, but like, where do you go from here? Like, you want to be more on the engineering production side, or do you want to be more as an artist and, go out and perform, making money through shows? Like, how does this business work for you specifically?
It's not easy, like, you know, going through this world as an independent artist, it's not easy at all, and you gotta wear like so many hats at the
Yeah.
same time. Like, you know, I have to figure out the finances, the logistics. I'm my own producer, I'm my own creative director, I don't have a label, I don't have a management, so I'm doing a lot by myself, and I'm happy that I have friends around who work in the music industry who would like help me here and there. Or like when South by was happening, I had a friend who came with me, and she was my like manager for that time, you know. But like usually, like I do a lot of things by myself, and so I work as a producer, sound designer, besides being an independent artist. And you know, the most of the money that I make and I save up, I invested in I invested back to my art when I can. So that's has been not easy at all. And eventually the goal is that I can do music, my music, full time, and still would do some sound design production gigs for others when I feel like. But right now, I'm kind of I'm working like over full time, you know, because I'm a freelancer sound designer producer, and I have like different clients, projects that I'm working on, and it's still music related and sound design related. That's something I love, and I want to do. But I wish I had even more time for my own music sometimes. And yeah, that's the sacrifice I make, because when I put more time in my music, I decide to put less time in my, I guess, real money making roles.
Yeah.
So
Like
yeah.
artists like, Keshi, do you know Keshi and Twee?
Yeah.
Yeah, these artists have somehow got to the point where they're probably not working their nursing jobs or, whatever their day jobs were, survival jobs, and got to the point where, they're doing music full time in the American mainstream. And that's a very difficult thing to accomplish because how many Vietnamese American artists are there in the world that are like Keshi or Twee, right? You can count them on a hand, but Paris by Night singers are making a living. They're touring, they have their places where they can go and sing. So their sort of their network connections are set up. But the Vietnamese American mainstream artists, or your Vietnamese-Hungarian, which is now Vietnamese American as well, how do you get to that point where you are like a Keshi or a Twee?
That's a really great question, and I look up so much to them. Like I love their music first of all, but also that they, you know, went from being an independent artist
Yeah.
to like, you know, um that today, like that's so inspiring for me. And how to do that, like, you know, that's a great that's a great question we all want to figure out. I just know that I will keep going and keep doing music as long as I feel that I have something to say and share. And I just hope that my, my true intentions and my passion will be heard up there by the universe or our ancestor or whoever, whoever like controls that to make our dream come true. I just have to have faith, I guess, and try to learn as much as I can from from other artists from everywhere to get more like to become a more well-rounded artist, especially like today's when we have to really do multiple roles at the same time and wear multiple hats. I'm really open, to get signed and find like the management team, the manager or the label deal that really supports me and see my vision. So when I was a young teenager in Hungary, there was a time, when I was also a full-time singer there. But I just didn't feel that was the place I at that time. I felt like I just want to explore more. I want to get exposed to other music and other cultures, because I felt like even though I had something to say, but I couldn't articulate it, I couldn't really find my sound. So even though I was like a full-time performing artist in Hungary, I was not like fully happy with my work, and I felt that there's more to discover and learn. So I moved here, and a lot of people ask me in Hungary, like, why am I not going back and be a full-time singer there again? And that's a good option. Like, I love Hungary. I love my people there. I love a lot of things in Hungary. That's why I still visit every year, and I spent quite a lot of time there. But I didn't feel like as inspired there as here. And I felt that there were so much more like limitations there creatively that I can do.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has probably to do with like a homogeneous society where, it's the same sort of thing that the music is not as diverse, not as expansive as an American mainstream. Well, that's not right either. As probably in America, there's just much more diversity in different types of music that exist rather than in Hungary.
Yes, and like in Hungary there are a lot of great art as well. And maybe at some point of my life I'm gonna be like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna move back to Hungary for a few years and create there. But at that time, with my teenager mindset, going through like an identity crisis, not understanding what being a Vietnamese means and all that, I felt like I needed to get out from there and be exposed to something different.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Have you been to Vietnam?
Yes, I've been to Vietnam many times. Like growing up, we almost went every year. We spent
Wow.
the summer breaks there, like summer breaks for me in
Yeah.
school.
Where in Vietnam would you spend time?
So we spent time in Hanoi, in Saigon, in like some smaller like towns and villages where we have our relatives, and also we would like travel as well if we could afford and had the time.
Music in Vietnam is also an option for you, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I love what the artist community is doing there and the direction that they are heading towards. I was lucky enough to meet some really dope creatives, both in the arts of like film and music in the past few years. We shot some music videos there, and I performed a few times there as well, and I had great experiences. So it's definitely in my plan to keep going back to Vietnam, possibly maybe like every year. So actually, like I still have family who lives there, so I visit family, and then also I try to look for like good collaboration opportunities with creatives.
speaking of collaboration, I want to shout out to Johnny D from VidQ Media for
Yeah.
our introduction. And it seems like he has a pulse on like developing artists, and I love bringing developing artists onto our podcast because, I want to get to know artists before they blow up and they get big and then come back every year, come back every 2 years to talk about the music and the development of their work. And so that's why I love to have like emerging artists coming onto the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like, shout out to Johnny, VidQ, shout out to you too. Like, I've been following both of you for a while, you know. Like Johnny has been really supportive with me, supportive with my music, in my early like stages. And I'm like, wow, like I haven't found a music media company that specifically highlights overseas Vietnamese artists. Like, how cool is that? And
Yeah.
same with you. When I found your podcast, The Vietnamese, I sent it to all of my friends. I'm like, wow, like finally a platform where we can like hear our stories. So I'm so happy to see that now there are like more of
Yeah,
these.
platforms. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
my honor to have you on today. And thank you so much for being so open and sharing all the experiences and being so, so candid about the life that you've lived in music.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. Special thanks to Brittany Tran, to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast.